Welcome back to the Intelligent Human Leadership Podcast. I am so grateful you're here once again. I had some great feedback on the last episode of the podcast. If you missed that, about storms of change with people coming into your organization, people leaving your organization, um, please go back and listen to that because I'm going to build on that last episode here. And I want to empower you as we're going to the end of the year. When I'm recording this, we are in Q4, October 2024, and I want to help you reimagine leadership, give you some strategies for the upcoming year using one tool that I use called the GiANT Leadership Audit. And coupled with the 5 voices for teams to set you up for success as the business owner or leader in your teams. You may be doing performance reviews. You may be looking at, hey, what's the next year going to be looking like for my team? Who am I need to be hiring? Where's the positions that are going to be held? What's going on within the company? Whether you're the leader of the company itself or a director, group manager, I'm here to walk alongside you and here to guide you and give you some strategies in ways that you can look at going into 2025 in a strong position, prepared to take advantage of the opportunities that are before you as you lead your team well, right? We're all about, on this podcast, helping you know yourself well to lead yourself and your teams. And so when we do this, we can be more effective, handle the, and improve the team dynamics and enhance the overall organizational performance. That's our goal here, is we want to get you in that winning position as a leader. And so you may have had some challenges or struggles, or maybe things aren't blowing up, but you know they could be better. But you're not quite sure exactly how to put your finger on it. So I'm going to introduce you in this podcast a simple leadership flywheel. If you're not familiar with a flywheel, it's just an area where they're all interconnected. And I'm going to talk about 5 particular areas that, in my experience as a coach and mentor, uh, one of these areas is likely to be an area of challenge or focus you might want to work on coming into 2024. Those 5 areas are communication. We all hear about communication regularly. I've talked about the communication code assessment on previous podcast episodes. We're going to cover capacity as well. What's our production capacity? How can we hold space to grow the company? Oftentimes, companies are growing at an accelerated rate, which is not a bad thing. But if you don't have the infrastructure and leadership in place, you can actually implode on yourself. We want to know about execution. How are you executing? What's the quality of your product or service that's going out there? Are your team in alignment with the values, the mission, the vision of what you've cast as a leader? And finally, the actual relationships. We all desire connection. We all desire to have that understanding, to be known, and so we want to understand this tool to help you make strategic decisions and ways to set yourself up for success in your organization going into the next year. You hopefully are doing some strategic planning by this time of the year. You're doing your budgeting. You're looking at ways that you can prepare your team to succeed in the coming year. So, with that said, if we're not looking, if we're not preparing, if we're not planning, right, we're living a life of default. We are drifting. We're hoping, and hoping is not a plan. I want to help you and equip you and give you tools that are going to actually empower you to be effective in the way you're leading your team. So when we look at this GiANT Leadership Audit, or GLA for short, it's a diagnostic tool. Like you go to get your car checked, right? They run it, they hook it up, they look at some things. And so this is a way that we can do a diagnostic as to what's going on in your organization, what's going on with your team, and then actually start to fix it, start to get the things in alignment, right? Moving in the right direction. And so these 5 core areas of leadership: communication, capacity, execution, alignment, and relationships, they're all interconnected. And I'm going to ask you some questions just to have you start thinking about where you might have some challenges in this. I want you to discuss, where you might have your weakest areas and reflect on how that affects your overall team performance. Um, like I said earlier, these are all interconnected. So, for example, poor communication may affect execution. High capacity issues may lead to burnout or turnover. I just had a recruiter on my Business Roundtable podcast, which I invite you to check out as well. And that's where I have other business leaders and come in and speak. And we were talking about that. Why would you need a recruiter? Because you're not having a good cohesive team, possibly, or there's not good communication. And so, one of the things I do, and this is no cost, this is a discovery call where we sit down, we talk, and we encourage you to go through and evaluate together, where are you in these areas. And sometimes you're doing pretty good, and other times you're like, I'm not so sure. It's always good, in my opinion, to regularly assess where you're at in this journey, because where you're at today, 3 6 months down the line, it may be a totally different circumstance. And so I want you to just take a moment here as I go through these and ask yourself, where might you be struggling, or you or your organization might be struggling? Of these 5 areas, if you rated yourself on a scale, let's just say 1 to 5, one being in the worst of shape, 5 being in the best of shape, where did you rate yourself? And I'll give you some promptings here just to consider. So in communication, let's just use that as an example. Communication. Are there issues that are coming up in communication? Are you dealing with possibly gossip, or maybe inefficiency, or misunderstandings, or maybe the ball's being dropped, right? Uh, Perhaps there's conflict, and it need not be need not be. It is unnecessary conflict, or is it, from your perspective? So look at communication and give yourself a realistic understanding. Where am I? Am I really on point? Am I totally a 5, or maybe a 4, 3, 2? I would say if you're at a 3 or lower, I would just encourage you to really consider, maybe there's some things we can tune up. Yeah, 3 is not 3 is the middle of the road, but what can we do to improve it? If you're in a 4 and a 5, or moving in that direction, which way do you think you're going? You're not going to be static, okay? You're going to be moving either one direction or another. And so communication is one. Another one I just brought up was relationships, right? Are are the is related to communication. There might be gossip, possibly. There might be mistrust. Um, there may be kind of a toxic environment, or where your relationships are weak at best. There's not a place in a safety, a place of connection with your team. In alignment, we could look at, like, is there wasted effort? Is there duplicate effort, possibly? Lost time, um, you know, and so you're really not being as effective in using your resources. You may have, in the consulting world, we talk about unbillable time. You can't account for it. You can't charge for it. It's just, oh my goodness, we're wasting time. We're bleeding here because we're not being very intentional in the way that we're in alignment and how we all work together. I like to use the analogy or vision of children playing soccer versus a professional soccer team. For children playing soccer, all run for the ball because they all want to get the ball, and that's how they play. Not very efficient. They're not in alignment. They don't know their positions. You see a well-run team, a professional team. They know their positions. They know how to pass the ball. They know how to score. They know how to work together very effectively. So look at and see, how is your alignment in your organization. Execution. How are you executing? Are you meeting your goals, or are there a lot of unmet goals? Is there missed deadlines? Are you constantly like stressed out? Oh, there goes another one, or I have to make another excuse. I messed up. Is the budgets not being maintained right? You don't have project managers to understand it. You can constantly having to, cover, or you can't cover. You can't recoup, possibly. Your credibility perhaps is being affected because clients or other team members don't trust each other. Again, goes back to communication, relationship. These are all interconnected. Or capacity. Again, are you having turnover, burnout, like I was mentioning earlier about a recruiter? Are there missed opportunities or stagnation in your capacity? So when you look at these things, I ask you some questions here because I want you to get clearer on what's going on in your organization. What are these areas? Which one did you rate yourself the lowest on, and why do you think that is? Do you think there's another area that's contributing to that lower rating? Like I mentioned, capacity being affected by trust and communication. Um, And so start to look at yourself honestly here. This is not showing guilt. I'm not here to make you feel bad about yourself. What I want you to do is get clear on the facts about where you're at so then you can make a plan to move forward. Again, this whole episode here is about how you can get in a place of strategy and preparing for this upcoming year, reimagining how leadership can be, and using these tools that I'm presenting you today on the podcast that helps you be that most intelligent human leader. So when we go through this, and I go in a deeper dive with you. So when you get on a call with me, and this is where we go with the GiANT Leadership Audit, is we can get deeper in this and discuss some of these areas. Um, there's then we can decide, okay, let's look at these things and figure out then what's the best tool to fix the job, right? You know, we're not just, pulling out one tool and just using the same tool like the hammer for everything, right? No, we're looking and saying, okay, what's the best tool and resource to help you in this current situation? One of the ones I use is called the Five Voices for Teams. And so there's ways that we can do a boot camp. There's ways that we can help understand communication. And you may have, hopefully, if you've listened to me this long on the podcast, you have heard me talk about the five voices: nurture, creative, guardian, connector, pioneer, and how these leadership voices differ and how we can appreciate those different voices. Um, and remember that each voice has a potential kryptonite, if you will, to undermine their effective performance and the way that they communicate it. And I was just talking to some folks today on a discovery call about some of the challenges that they're having communicating with each other. And we don't want to get it to where it's so intense and so emotional that you are losing people, they're shutting down. I want to help you get ahead of it much sooner than that. We want to learn each other's strengths and avoid the pitfalls of poor communication. We want to be leading with improved team alignment and execution. So what happens is if you're not paying attention to these things, you're kind of like, yeah, it's certainly not that bad, but it can blow up, it can go bigger. And you don't want to have that. Especially what I've seen potentially is where you have, unfortunately, a blow up where one person leaves and they may bring other people with them because they're just, it's like, cascading. And we don't want you to have to lose that. You don't want to have that strife in your organization. It's very hard to recover, especially when you're a small business. It can take, honestly, not months, but years to recover. And that's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort that we can avoid and help you become in a much better place. So one of the things I do is use the five voices assessment for teams and better understand team dynamics, build trust, collaboration, and synergy. This is just one way that you can start to plan and be proactive. Um, and I know a lot of people want a silver bullet. This podcast is not a silver bullet. I can't solve all your problems on the podcast. I can start to give you good information and resources that you can then start to apply. However, this is an ongoing process to deal with the problems and challenges you're facing. If you ever are hiring somebody that says, I can come in, I'll give you a workshop or I'll give you a seminar for a day, and that's it, I'm just telling you, it's not going to have a long lasting effect. It may have a short effect, but what you're looking for is a long-term strategy for your team, to build your team, to support your team. And so when we use the GiANT Leadership Audit, we can set leadership and team goals. Again, here we are at the end of the year, 2024. You should be looking at goals. I want to encourage you, if you're not looking at goals, start looking now. What are your goals? What's your action items? What are the things that you want to achieve for yourself and for your team? Help them be in alignment, cast the vision for them. When we go through this process, we can walk through and look at the results and set targeted leadership and team development goals for the next year, for the next month. There's things that we can do proactively so that we're all in alignment. These when we go through this leadership audit, we look at the different voices, we look at the makeup of your team, right? and that we can ensure that those goals improve communication, improve capacity, enhance execution, and foster the strong relationships. We're looking at, it's not one of these isolated; they're connected, and so when we tug on one, it shows up on the others. And so we can set up, for example, a 90-day execution plan, focusing on specific areas where I work with you, the leader, right, and your team to harness this resource. And I can't tell you how impressed I've been and how it has affected me personally, and professionally using the five voices. That's why I've gotten certified recently in the five voices for teams, because I believe in it so much. I've tried other tools like Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strength Finders, Colbier. They're good. Don't get me wrong, but I found the language and the understanding the five voices to be really superior, and one that I wholeheartedly hold on to, and I really believe strongly that it can, and I've seen it firsthand, affect teams positively. Um, while we are doing this and we're looking at how to set leadership and team goals, by doing that and casting that vision and putting that forth, your team's going to be more engaged. And a more engaged team is going to have more production, generally speaking. Quality is going to be up. And so when we consider team engagement in this reimagining leadership process, we can increase self-awareness and improve communication across the team, because people, number one, understand who they are and they understand how they fit with the rest of the team. We can look at the audit, the leadership audit, to assess the relationships and the alignment challenges that you're facing, identify areas where we need to work on building trust and creating a better team synergy. That is one of the ways that we can really start to turn things around if it's been off or not quite as on point as you would like it to be. And when we do this, we can have insights about how teams can address mistrust, misalignment, poor communication. So while we're looking at goals and objectives, we can also, build on team engagement. And so we can work through regular sessions using the tools of the GiANT Leadership Audit, Five Voices workshops, again, based on where you're at. What are the things you need? Is it communication? Is it capacity? Is it execution? Where are we struggling? Where are we leaking power, so to speak? Where are we leaking certainty and clarity? And so, again, ask yourself those questions. Be willing to really look at it. What's working and what's not working? And you know, it's okay that things aren't working. If you're growing a company, that's part of the journey. Okay, you're not going to get it all right, and you're going to have ups and downs, and you're going to have to learn. And oftentimes, some things we're really good at, and other things we're not as good at. And so that's where I can come in and help you. And that's why I created the podcast as a way of giving you some resources and tools to know you're not alone and you have an advocate here. Um, we want to measure success and progress. And so what we can do over time is we can do performance assessments. We can look at things and see how we're doing today and compare that going forward in the future. How we're making progress toward our goals. It's so important to track it. Uh, I know the difference between tracking and not tracking, and looking and seeing the difference about the progress we're making. We can do regularly reviews, getting critical feedback loops to ensure progress is being made. And so there's tools like, I use the Full Focus Planner here. This one right in front of me for my goals. I have the Warrior tools. There's a lot of different tools I can pull out and help you based on this audit, assessing where you're at. So I hope as you're hearing this, it's inspiring you to look at things and not feeling weighed down, but realizing, you know what, I can be the more effective leader. I can actually set the stage and chart the course and reimagine what leadership looks like, and I have some strategies and understandings for the upcoming year. I can actually quantify and look and say, how am I showing up and how is my team showing up in their communication, capacity, execution, alignment, relationships. Look at those 5 areas. They're all interconnected, and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How are you showing up in those areas? And then say, hey, you know what? I might not be doing as good as in this area. I know a resource. I know David is Steward Your Business. He has some insights and resources that might be of help to me. That's where I customize it, work with you, the Steward Yourself program, where we can go together and make sure you're getting the help that you need to grow and be that healthiest leader in the room, to where people are saying, man, I can't believe you're already ahead of this. You know the challenges I'm facing. You're helping me become a better leader myself. So I invite you to do a discovery call. Reach out to me. It's no cost. I do a free discovery call, figuring out, hey, let's look at this. We go through the audit, and then we see what would be a best fit. If what I have to offer is a great fit, or maybe there's some things that you need that I don't do, and I can help direct you and give you other resources. That's what I'm all about, is providing support and resources and getting you in the right direction. Therefore, you're going to be leading your team and having a plan. And when you have a plan and are prepared, you can fully take advantage of these opportunities that you might not be able to, because you're kind of dealing with leaking leadership and energy. And so we're going to fill those holes, fill those gaps, so that you're in a strong position. You're creating a solid foundation and framework in which to build your organization, your team. I appreciate you listening as always, and leaving a like, a comment, a 5-star review on your favorite platform, whether it's Spreaker where I put it on, or Apple Podcasts. You can watch this if you're listening to it on YouTube. I always appreciate those that are following me on YouTube. Subscribe as well, and join me on the journey. I appreciate you all being a part of this, and welcome your comments. Look forward to hearing from you. And until then, be well, be prepared, keep planning, and let's have an amazing end of 2024 as you plan your trajectory into 2025. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, take care.